Happy holidays, Canisius High School community. It is Andy Deyell back with another episode of Conversations with Canisius. I am joined today by a very special guest. We have all the way from Venice, Florida, sunny and warm, Venice, Florida, Tom Scanlon from the class of 64. And Tom is a former senior vice president at M&T Bank. And Tom, how are you today?
Well, I'm doing well, thanks, Andy. How's everything up in Buffalo? I watched the game last night. It was a little windy in Buffalo.
It was a little windy. The Patriots game did not go our way, and it's been windy and stormy up here. But that's winter in Buffalo for sure. So
if you're a Buffalonian, you're used to defeat, but
yeah, the winter and defeat.
It wasn't a Chamber of Commerce day. Let's put it that way.
That's right. Two things we signed up for, right? So we're going to jump right into this. We have about half an hour, Tom, to talk a little bit about your background and your career at Canisius High School and your career afterwards. And it's been quite a storied career. So let's go back in time to 1960. You were an eighth grader in Buffalo and you're looking at different high schools. Tell me a little bit about how you found yourself choosing Canisius High School and about your experience in your 4 years there.
Well, to be honest with you, it was almost preordained that I was going to go to Canisius High School. My father was class of 1928. He was very proud of Canisius High School. Then he went to Niagara University, and I didn't mention this to you, but after Niagara, he went into the Jesuit novitiate at St. Andrews. He went there for a year, but vocation wasn't for him, which is a fortunate thing for me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking with you today. Yeah, even though it was preordained that I was going to go to Canisius, it wasn't easy because I was born in 1946, which was the leading edge of the baby boomers. And it was quite competitive to get in Canisius in those days, and probably still is. But I remember distinctly the day at St. Andrew's Grammar School, where they handed out the envelopes as to whether you were accepted or not. And everyone was quite anxious. And fortunately, I was accepted, but two or three of my classmates were not. And there were tears shed because they were going to go to St. Joe's, unfortunately, or the public high school. In any event, you're right. I started my career at Canisius in 1960. I remember they divided the classes, and I don't know if they did it based on the entrance exam or whatever, but into the science honors course, Greek honors, and then there was the rest of us. We were called the zoo. Euphemistically called the zoo. We were your quintessential B students, honorable mention, Blue Seals, a lot of athletes, what have you. But I've got to tell you, I went to my 50th reunion a few years ago, and a lot of us who were in that particular class, sure, the science honors, a lot of physicians, Greek honors, a lot of prominent attorneys, but we were very well represented. I must say, at that reunion, a lot of prominent businessmen. So there's hope for the B students. I always told my mother, if I got a B at Canisius, it was like an A anywhere else.
That's true. That's true.
She didn't go. She didn't believe me, but we did that. We went through that exercise anyways. But anyways, Canisius was wonderful. I graduated from Canisius High in 1964. Went into Canisius College, like about half of my class. It was a very large class, almost 200 kids, if I remember correctly. Graduated with a degree in sociology. Found out upon graduation, enjoyed it very much, I must say, but found out that a degree in sociology doesn't prepare you for the business world. So I was very fortunate in that I was able to go to the University of Buffalo Business School in a rather new degree back then. It was called the MBA. Sure. And the MBA degree sort of set me apart from others, let's say, and majored in finance and economics. Joined Marine Midland Bank in 1970, I believe it was, went to their management development training program, and was very fortunate to spin off into the commercial real estate area. Construction lending for large, hotels, apartment buildings, office buildings, malls. We even did a stadium for Joe Robbie back in the day for Miami Dolphins. That deal was actually put together by Nelson Savello, another Canisius graduate who I know you know. He was head of our municipal bond department at the time.
Right, yeah.
So it was quite interesting doing the real estate deals that we did. I guess by I don't know, I guess it was 1982, 83, I became head of that department. And by that time, Hong Kong Shanghai Bank, HSBC, bought Marine Midland at that time. And we were doing very well. We had offices in New York, Washington, Atlanta, Los Angeles. We had nearly $1 billion in construction loan commitments. And as I say, it was very enjoyable meeting a lot of very interesting people. Real estate developers are by nature very creative, very risk-taking. But I remember when HSBC bought us in 1986, the president of the bank came down and wanted to talk to me. HSBC's philosophy was they wanted to have general managers that they could plug in, whether it be in London, Hong Kong, where they're headquartered, Abu Dhabi, wherever. They didn't want specialists. And so I remember the president of the bank came down to me and said, listen, Tom, we want you to be head of the personnel department. I said, well, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this one. So I said to him, I said, Jeff, I don't even know how to spell personnel. I don't know if it's 2 N's, 1 L, 1 N, 2 L's. I thought that maybe, and he said, well, why don't we change it to human resources? Everybody else is. So that was the beginning. I became division executive for the human resources department, which was very challenging because at that time, technology was really buffeting the commercial banking industry, the advent of the personal computer. And that pretty much meant that our backroom operations, much of our backroom was redundant, let's say. And we had to reduce our full-time employees from 14,000 down to 10,000, which I think we did humanely for the most part through early buyouts, early retirement buyouts, I should say, enhanced severance packages and the like. And we did meet the 10,000 goal after a couple of years. But it was a very challenging time. And that was in addition to all the employee relation problems, pension issues, government regulations, what have you. But again, as I said, my Canisius background, I think, prepared me for that position to have at least some self-confidence going into it, because I really didn't know that much about human resources prior. And then finally, my last position at Marine Midland Bank was head of operations, which was the physical plant at that time. I'm talking about the office buildings, our footprint throughout the state. The biggest building of which was, of course, main Seneca Tower, One Seneca Tower, they call it now. That was 1.2 million square feet. That probably took 3 full-time employees just to manage that building. And I saw it for the first time, actually, last year when I was in downtown Buffalo for an occasion. And I can't believe what the developer, Douglas Jamal, I believe his name is, how he's repurposed that building. I never thought it could be done. So into a multifamily, I mean, it's just an incredible job that he's done, and Buffalo's very lucky to have it.
Outside of the building, even physically, it looks so much different. Just
it does. My daughter said, they changed the color. Of course, it was always, when it was built, it was a light beige.
Yeah.
But then with the dirt and everything, it became sort of a darker beige. And but what he did was, it's I don't know what you call it, a rust color, whatever. Yeah. It's very attractive. Yeah. But in any event, I missed my commercial lending days. And so in 1991, I believe it would be, I went down the street to M&T Bank with the help, I might say, of a couple of Canisius guys. Don't ever underestimate the power of the Canisius High School network when you get out of school. Very fortunate to get a job there as a senior credit officer for commercial lending. And there I approved loans that were not just for real estate developers, but for auto dealers, business banking customers, industrial, that type of thing. Also at M&T, you wear many hats. I was president of the M&T Capital Corporation, which was a venture capital company, which they had, one of the few banks that had a venture capital company. And that was an interesting business. I don't want to overstate it, was very small. and it's nothing like the venture capital companies today. And my job was basically to liquidate it. But it's a funny business model in the sense that equity infusion is much more difficult than lending because it's riskier. So it was always said your batting average could be 250 if you had one hit out of four chances. In other words, if you had four deals, $1 million in four deals, you lose three, but you hit on the fourth one, maybe you get when it goes public or gets bought out by another company, you'd make $10 million. And it really is interesting how that all works. I'm sure it's the same today as far as hits and misses. And then finally, let's see. Again, it wasn't a formal designation, but I was part of M&T Bank's due diligence teams. M&T has expanded dramatically from the first acquisition that I wasn't part of, was the Gold Dome Bank, if you remember, back in the 80s. And then buying a number of banks in New York State, Pennsylvania. And the last one I was involved with was in Baltimore. We bought a bank called Allfirst from Allied Irish Bank. They decided to go back into European lending and get out of the United States. And so if anybody's ever wondering how you see the M&T Bank stadium there, or Lamar Jackson's talking behind an M&T logo, that's how that all came about, because obviously people in Baltimore did not know who M&T Bank was, but by now we're the largest bank in that area. So that worked out very well. And M&T Bank has now expanded to be one of the largest and most profitable banks in the country. Having said that, my goal was always to retire before I was 60. And so in 2007, I retired and built this house in Florida with my wife. And but I wasn't sure retirement was going to be for me, and so I stayed on for 1 year as a consultant, worked part-time for the bank. But as Marv Levy once said, if you think you're retired, if you're thinking about retirement, you're probably retired. And to be honest with you, being down here in Florida and doing the things I was doing, and the world was changed. 2008 was big. That's when the Great Recession hit. Yeah. It was time, and so here we are. So in 2008, I formally retired, and we've been here for the last 15 years or so.
As you reflect back on that, long and prosperous career, can you point to one or two things that maybe you learned at Canisius High School that prepared you for your work life, or that inspired you sort of along the way?
Well, it's interesting. From a general perspective, I think just the fact that you graduated from Canisius High School gave you self-confidence. And I say that because, there were no participation trophies at Canisius. You sank or swim. The self-esteem movement was yet to be born. The Jesuits probably followed a more self-deprecation, if you will, and, tear you down and build you up into a better man. And the fact, that, listen, if you're 30 years old and you're, across the table from a very successful developer, you have to have some self-confidence in your abilities. And I think Canisius certainly gave you that. Just the fact that you graduated from Canisius, a good Jesuit high school. Time management. I mean, one of the things you had to do at Canisius, I'm sure it's the same way today, we had 2 to 3 hours of homework every night. And you had to triage, if you will, same as you do in business, what's important. Ironically, M&T Bank's motto is understanding what's important. But at Canisius, you had to understand where to put your time in, where to study, what courses to study, et cetera. So time management was very important. It was even more important. And I think, if you were in sports, and I played some basketball, and, being in sports, and maybe this is true of any high school, I think sharing a, goal, discipline, teamwork, all those type of things help in your later business career, or any profession for that matter. I mean, there's an old saying, the road to the boardroom goes through the locker room. And that very well may be true. I know when I hired young men and women, I always look for their athletic background, because I think sports is a great preparation for later life. So those are sort of some of the things that I think Canisius gave me.
And one of the other huge parts of Canisius, obviously, it's not just the intellectual preparation, but it's also some of the spiritual preparation. You know, we constantly are trumpeting our motto of being men and women for and with others, and that sort of Ignatian idea of being a man for others. How do you find that present in your life today, and how did you find that present in your work life and during your career?
Well, Andy, I'd be very hypocritical if I say I woke up every morning trying to follow the Ignatian model.
Right.
But I will say this, as I said earlier, my father was in the Jesuits for a year. And because of that, when I was in grammar school, I got to know a lot of the Jesuits who would come to our house, usually around 5 o'clock, around dinner time, driving my mother crazy. But we had a chance to visit with the Jesuits. And I just found the Jesuits to be worldly, yet holy at the same time. They were pragmatic. They weren't dogmatic like some of the other priests, diocesan priests, so let's say.
Sure.
They were just wonderful, intelligent men. I think back then it took 14 years to become a Jesuit. And so they were very knowledgeable in their field, whatever, mathematics, Latin, what have you. And I just found them wonderful people, wonderful. And above all, they were dedicated service to others, whether it was at Canisius High School or whether it was in missionaries throughout the world. So there, maybe some of that rubbed off on me. I don't know. I'll tell you this, integrity is another virtue that they have, because frankly, I thought by knowing all these Jesuits, many of whom became my teachers later on, that I'd be more like their favorite son, which turned out to be not to be true. I had more than my fair share of jug, which every Canisian knows, every Crusader knows is an essential part of Canisius. And I can still remember Father Sturm, writing the topic on the board, write 1,000 words, a 1,000-word essay on the insides of a ping pong ball. And when you're done, hand it in, you go home. Well, I tried to catch the last bus to Tonawanda, and I went in there and I said, Father, I've only got like 800 words up, but can I? And he would just look at it. I know he said this to a lot of students. Only God dispenses mercy. I dispense justice.
That's right.
Go in there and write another 1,500 words. So I don't know what I got out of that, but I got something out of it. It's funny. I was talking to my brother last week, and he told me he had never had jug. And to me, that's like a life not lived. I mean,
That's right.
it's an essential part of the Canisius experience. I mean, I asked him if he's proud of it. He said, yeah. I said, well, that's like winning the Lady Byng trophy in the NHL. I mean, it's nice, but I mean, you got to go through jug to be successful. Anyways,
that's a good segue. It's a great segue to my next question. As we want our alums, young and old alike, to see these videos and to be inspired by them. And if you were, to give a couple pieces of advice to young alums today, people who are just graduating from college, starting out in their careers, what was some advice that you would give young people today?
Well, I would say first and foremost, do something that you're passionate about, whether it's in school, college, or more importantly, later in life. I can't imagine what it would be like to work someplace if you didn't enjoy what you were doing. Life is to be enjoyed. I know it's trite to say, follow your dream, be passionate about it, but it makes it no less true. It goes by quick, and you want to be passionate about whatever you're going to be doing. Two, and once you have your job, the job you want, work hard, do the best you can, separate yourself from others, make yourself noticeable, especially early on. But one thing I must say, because I worked on Wall Street for a number of years, I saw too many young men and women working 60 and 80-hour weeks just burn out by the time they were 30 years old. And to the detriment of their family, friends, what have you. So I guess my second piece of advice would be, enjoy it, pace yourself, the Aristotelian model of moderation in all things. I never heard of anybody, it's the old joke, nobody on their deathbed ever said, I want to spend more time in the office. It's quite the contrary. So that would be the second piece of advice. And the third piece, what was that? The college acceptances are going to be coming out pretty soon for the seniors. And I would just tell the seniors, don't be too disappointed if you don't get your stretch school. I'll tell you what, I've hired hundreds of young men and women over my career. And frankly, I have found more success, less with the Ivy League and the more prestigious schools, more with the Canisius College, John Curls, Sienna's, Newbie, you name it. I just think a lot of the kids that come out of and God bless you if you get in your school, but a lot of the kids that say come out of the Ivy League schools that I've hired, they want to be president in 2 years, or I'm sorry, vice president in 2 years, president within 4 years. It doesn't work like that. So our retention rate was very low. So, and it's funny, I was talking to my son, Villanova grad, Canisius grad, Villanova engineer. He said the same thing. We were just here last week. He said, when I hire from Penn State, Virginia Tech. I don't even go to MIT anymore, Caltech. I go with those schools. It just seems we've got a better result. Anyways, so you'll have a lot, whatever college you get into, you'll have your hands full. I always remember the cartoon. The young man is talking to Yale admissions counselor saying, Harvard's got 1 million books. Yale's only got 700,000. The Yale guy goes, well, you know what? You read the first 700,000, I'll buy you the last 300,000. And you'll have your hands full when you're in college. And as I say, I think your postgraduate is probably more determinative of how successful you'll be in whatever profession you choose. So I guess those are my 3 pieces of avuncular advice.
That's great advice. No, it's all, and it resonates,
I think it's true in a lot of respects.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you've been retired now, Tom, for 15 years. And my next question is always about the future. Like, what do you have planned? What is on the horizon for you now that we're coming out of this pandemic? A lot of people say travel, a lot of people, getting back to this, that, and the other thing. What is it that you have planned for the future years?
Well, that's a good question. With the pandemic, Omicron, I wasn't, as you know, I wasn't a Greek honors major, so it's Omicron, I guess. Anyway, I guess my wife and I are here in Venice. We live on a golf course. We play a lot of golf. One good thing about getting old is I'm getting close to shooting my age, although to be honest, I'm not really getting close to shoot my age. It's going to take another 10 years at least, but God willing. So we stay here in the wintertime. We have a place on Chautauqua Lake that we go back to in the summer. Florida's too hot in the summer. Our grandkids are up in Buffalo area. So we do that. We're fortunate. We do travel a lot. We've been most everywhere, my wife and I. We just got back from a tour from Australia, a 30-day tour of Australia and New Zealand, which I recommend highly, just before the pandemic hit. Otherwise, I'd still probably talking to you from Brisbane or someplace. No, so we want to travel again once the pandemic is over. My wife wants to go. I must say, my wife of 55 years, lovely Bishop Colton girl. She is the wind beneath my wings, as they say. And I'm sure if you talk to any Canisius high school grad, they'll say their wives are most important, and they are. But anyways, she wants to go to Africa. She has always wanted to go on an African safari. That's not on my bucket list, so we'll see. I don't know. Everything's sort of status quo right now. If the worst case happens, I'll just walk down the Venice beaches as we do every other day. And it's funny, I guess I'll just end with this. I'll wear a Buffalo Bills cap or a t-shirt or something like that. And invariably, Andy, another Buffalonian, there's so many Buffalonians down here,
Sure,
will come up and say, hey, Bills, Buffalo, where, and it's like a little ritual. It really is. It's like you get 3 questions. First question is, what town did you grow up in? Okay, that's the question. You got to find where your lives intersect. The second question is always, where did you go to high school? I always let them ask me, where did you go to high school? And honestly, I must tell you, every time they ask me that question, I can feel it, a little groundswell of pride. Well, I went to Canisius High School. And, it's just funny. There's so much respect. And, it's just great. After all these years, I can still feel it. And, you don't want to be arrogant or cocky. You want to be humble. Unless it's a St. Joe's grad you're talking to. And then you got it's the error of their ways, but you know what? They know. They know. Any event, no, I'm very proud of my Canisius heritage. In my day, it was always you went to Canisius for the athletic or for the academics, St. Joe's for the athletics. Now I follow the Canisius sports teams. You go to Canisius for the academics and the athletics. I mean, the volleyball team I just saw did very well. Very proud of my Canisius heritage, Andy, and again, proud to be a Crusader. And I know I speak for many, many families throughout West New York who've had generation after generation go through Canisius. We're very, very fortunate.
We are. And thank you, Tom, for spending all this time with me today. And I wish you the best in Florida. I wish you continued fun in your retirement. I hope you hit your age and your score in golf very soon. And I hope you guys have a wonderful holiday and that we see you back in Buffalo at some point too.
Absolutely. Thank you, Andy. I enjoyed talking with you.
As did I. Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.